Hi, everybody. Welcome to Workforce Wednesday. Everybody's so quiet today. For everyone on there, if you go next to where it says notes and it says more up at the top, go more settings, don't show chat bubbles, and mute notifications. It'll be really helpful throughout the event because it can be really distracting. It'll be dinging a lot.
Oh, yes. For those that are joining, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great.
I'm loving to see all these partners that are showing up. So please feel free to put your resources in the chat and collaborate with ideas. Hey, Adrian. We got lots of people that are popping in.
All right. Well, Jessica, it is 10:59. If you want to go ahead and start. Have we started recording yet?
Yep, we should be recording.
Okay.
All right. Well, it looks like it's time to roll. I got lost looking at everybody who was popping in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to September 2025 and National Hispanic Heritage Month, World Alzheimer's Disease Month, and Library Card Sign-Up Month. We're so excited that you're here and are looking forward to our discussion focused on engaging the unhoused workforce. So, why should you be building a talent line for unhoused individuals? Because you likely already are and you don't even know it. Across Minnesota and beyond, the definition of unhoused has evolved, and it's no longer limited to those sleeping outdoors or in shelters. It includes people who are couch surfing or staying temporarily with friends or family, people that are living in motels, cars, or transitional housing. It's families who are doubling up in overcrowded units due to economic hardship, individuals that are facing eviction or housing instability despite their full-time employment. These are your potential hires, and in many cases, they're already your employees, and that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to learn from some experts on what you can do today to identify and support unhoused talent, from normalizing conversations around housing and adjusting your hiring practices to prevent bias, to auditing your workforce in order to identify and offer wraparound supports. My name is Jessica Miller, and I'm the Director of Workforce Strategy for the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, and we are so happy to have you here with us today. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining us. If you're returning, thank you for joining us again. To kick things off, I see lots of engagement in the chat. Please let us know, if you haven't already, who you are, your role, where you work, and if you're so inclined, the best book you've ever checked out from a library. And bonus points if it's written by a Hispanic author. So I'll go first. The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros is one of my all-time favorite books. Our team of consultants work regionally, which means that each consultant will have a slightly different way that they do their work based on the region and the employers that they're serving in those regions. But the common core ways that we support employers are identified on this slide. You'll see that the common core ways that we support our employers are identified on this slide. We'll work with you to identify your gaps in your current strategies, ensure that you are connected with your local, regional, and state workforce partners, and we assist you in building strategies that will help you attract and retain workforce. As you will learn today, our consultation process is rooted and informed by data and is developed specifically with your company's needs and goals in mind. We serve as your guide through the process and convene workforce partners for support, sharing training grant opportunities, and continually check in to ensure progress is being made and assist with making adjustments along the way to meet your goals. When you work with us, you're automatically connected to a wide network of people and partners who work collaboratively for the success of our state and our regions and our communities so that your business and our workforce can thrive. And we do not do this work alone. It takes many people to bring success to these efforts. And many of you are in the audience today. And you'll see some of those folks here on our panel today. You'll see on this slide that we have our 2025 lineup available for registration, what is left of it. Geez, you spoke, we listened, we incorporated your feedback into these topics, and we'll continue to weave your needs into sessions for the rest of the year. What's left of it, like I said, but we're in the process of working on our 2026 lineup. So let us know if there's anything that you would like to learn more about and pop that in the chat. I would also like to encourage you to fill out the evaluation at the end of our time together. We'll get that link popped into the chat for you. And this is your perfect opportunity to share your thoughts on these sessions and let us know what you find valuable. As always, these webinars are recorded and available to view at any time via YouTube, as well as our CareerForceMN.gov website, where you can find recordings and resources from this session, along with all of the other previous sessions. We've got a few years of content that are up there now. Lots of gems that you could be digging through. We will be utilizing our chat feature here today throughout our time. Please ask questions, answer questions, interact with our guests, consultants, partners, and each other. We really want to build on this community that we've started and welcome your engagement. And you'll see at the top of the screen, there is a button for Q&A. We would love if you would utilize that particular feature for your questions and upvote if there's a question that you really would like to learn and have us answer. So we have a packed agenda with speakers who have dedicated their careers to being change makers and culture shakers, and I'm really excited for you to meet them. So without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce you to the fabulous Adeshewa Adesiji, our Metro Workforce Strategy Consultant.
Thank you so much, Jess. Good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Adeshewa Adesiji. I am the Workforce Strategy Consultant for the Metro area, and I will be facilitating this month's workforce webinar. The topic is on engaging the unhoused workforce. So just let's take a look at the agenda for this webinar. I will talk a little bit about who is the unhoused, engaging the unhoused job seeker, why it matters, removing barriers, what employers can do, checklist. Do you have a checklist? Are you hiring inclusively? How you as the employer can take the first step, and then we'll end with a lovely and robust panel discussion with some good experts. So without further ado, let's go ahead. So who is the unhoused? I think understanding the unhoused talent pool means recognizing that individuals, experiencing homelessness often are overlooked by employers. They possess a wide range of valuable skills, experience, and potential. Tapping into this underutilized workforce requires shifting perspectives from employers and from resources that work with this talent pool, and addressing structural barriers and implementing, inclusive practices. There is no one picture or one representation of who is unhoused. As Jessica mentioned earlier, the unhoused can be someone couch surfing or families that have moved in together. Or I'd like to use it as an example. I'm a coffee drinker, and every once in a while I like to go into a coffee shop and have a cup of coffee and relax. That person sitting next to you that's enjoying that cup of coffee could be coming in from outside because maybe the weather is too hot or maybe, it's too cold, and you would have no idea that they're unhoused. They can just be, just a coffee drinker, another coffee drinker to you. Or, when you're walking downtown, it could be the youth that walks past you. You have no idea that they're unhoused. What I'm getting at is that there's not one particular face when it comes to unhoused. And I think as employers, as organizations that work in this space, realizing that the unhoused is not going to be someone that just has either, a chemical dependency issue or a mental health issue. It could be someone that just has fallen on hard times and you'd never know because they don't fit into that stereotype of what someone who is unhoused should look like. So this is some data from the census for 2024. So anyone that has attended any of the other workforce or the Workforce Wednesday webinars that I've facilitated, I always like to pull in some type of data. So from this data, what we can see, or some of the things that I've learned from doing some research, is while the majority of unhoused are males, there is an increasing number of women, especially women with young children, who are becoming unhoused as well. The majority of those unhoused are between the ages of 18 to 64, and a large number of those that are unhoused have some type of disability. And so going back to what I had mentioned previously, there's just not one face or there's not one representation of unhoused. Unhoused can go across race, ethnicity, um, gender, sexual orientation, age. Anyone out there can be unhoused or have the potential of experiencing being unhoused in their lifetime. So engaging with the unhoused, why it matters. So engaging with an unhoused job seeker matters in the workplace because it creates a more resilient workforce. It also provides new perspectives and strengthens a company's social responsibility. By overcoming stereotypes and implementing supportive hiring practices, businesses can assess a skilled and motivated talent pool while creating a more inclusive company culture. So here are some benefits. Of course, these are only a few of the benefits. There's a plethora of benefits for companies engaging with the unhoused talent pool. Once again, access to resilient and a loyal talent pool, enhance innovation and problem solving, improve company culture and employee morale. It strengthens brand representation and community ties, and then potential tax benefits and cost savings for the employer. I know employers like that last one. Benefits for unhoused job seekers and the community. It leads to pathways to stability. It's a holistic support and personal development, and it breaks the cycle of poverty and the stigma of being unhoused. So removing barriers, what employers can do. Once again, unhoused job seekers, unhoused individuals, they face significant barriers to employment that range from practical logistic challenges to systematic discrimination. These are some examples of some barriers for those unhoused when it comes to applying and seeking employment and what employers can do. So, for example, one of the barriers, no permanent address or ID. What employers can it do? Accept shelter addresses or local service provider contact information. Allow digital or phone-based communications in place of mailed forms, if that's what you still do. Limited intranet or tech access. Allow in-person applications. I know that we're a digital nowadays and everyone wants to do everything online. Submit your application here. Submit your resume here. Let's do a virtual meeting instead of in person. Well, that's a big barrier for those that don't have don't have or have limited internet or tech access. So it's really important for employers to allow those type of, what I like to say, old school methods for those job seekers that have those limitations. You have transportation challenges. So considering a hybrid or remote work, I know, this has been proven that this works the best for most people. It doesn't matter if you're housed or unhoused. So looking at hybrid remote work, partner with organizations to provide van pool rides. There's a couple of organizations here in the metro that work with employers to set up van pool opportunities for those individuals that have transportation challenges. If you're hiring for multiple sites, choose locations that are easily accessible by public transportation or flexible scheduling for those longer commutes. For those gaps in work history, focus more on skills, not not the order, and not the space between employments. Use skill-based interviews. Reconsider strict background check policies for nonviolent or old offenses. So especially for the gaps in work history, and this is from my days when I was a job counselor and working with job seekers looking for employment. Having someone list their job history in chronological order and seeing those gaps really doesn't work and really doesn't tell the true story of the skill sets that that individual had that might be beneficial to your company. So focus more on the skill sets. What skill sets and what experiences that they have at the jobs that they worked at that can align with what you're looking for workers for your company, and not focus on this person worked for 2 years here, and then there was a 2 year gap, and then they worked for a year, and then there's a 3 year gap. Focus more on the skill sets. Stigma from coworkers or managers. This is really unfortunate, but we do have, and it's a reality, there might be stigma, and there might be coworkers and managers, if they find out that someone is unhoused, treats that person a different way or kind of looks down on them. So really training HR and hiring managers to avoid those biases and assumptions about unhoused candidates, in building a workplace culture where everyone is accepted. We build a workplace culture where people are accepted based on race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, age. Let's also include, social economic status and housed and unhoused individuals. Bottom line is your place of business should be a positive experience for everyone, no matter what their circumstances are. Lack of skills or experience, offer on the job training or apprenticeships, create entry level roles that include mentorship and upskilling paths. And then lack of support systems, partnering with local career force or workforce development partners. We have tons of partners here in the metro and throughout Minnesota. One of the resources that I have at the end of this webinar. There's an organization called Workwell Minnesota. It's a collaboration of different community-based organizations throughout the metro and throughout Minnesota. Partner with them, reach out to them, because a lot of times they are working with these unhoused job seekers. So what should the framework for inclusive hiring and unhoused workforce look like? So hiring people who are unhoused or experiencing homelessness can be a powerful and inclusive practice that promotes equity and economic opportunity. So here's a checklist. Once again, not the full checklist. This is just some of the things that should be on the checklist. So, organizational readiness. Once again, training leadership and staff on homelessness, trauma-informed practices, and exclusive hiring, and reviewing, HR policies to remove unnecessary barriers. Once again, the address requirements, uh, um, not looking at employment history gaps, but looking at the skill sets that someone has acquired. Job design and flexibility, offering entry-level roles that don't require formal education or consistent past employment. So one of the things that when I talk to employers, or one of the things that I'm adamant about and strong on, is cultivating and growing our own. This is an opportunity for an employer to take someone that is unhoused, put them into an entry-level role and help them develop the skill sets in providing those support services for that person to grow and to become, a loyal employee. That's one of the ways that you can increase retention, is if you support and you help that individual grow. So the application process, once again, removing strict address or phone number requirements, allow the use of PO boxes, shelter addresses, or third-party contacts. Offer paper and in-person application. I know that that might be more of a pain for employers because, once again, we're now in the digital age when everything is done online, but still offering that option for those individuals that have that limited internet access. Recruitment and outreach, promoting or posting your job openings in shelters, food banks, libraries, clinics, places that someone that is unhoused would frequent. Partner with job readiness programs and homelessness service organizations for referrals. Once again, reaching out to Workwell Minnesota and one of the many community-based organizations that is part of that collaborative to partner with them. The interview process. So being flexible with interview formats. Once again, not sticking to just virtual, but in person, or, if they do have a phone interviews. Offer transportation stipends or conduct interviews at locations accessible by public transit. Once again, if you're open to in-person interviews, why not set it up at a place that is more convenient and easier for that applicant to get to? Onboarding and support. So providing basic onboarding resources. So if you realize that the person doesn't have an ID, helping them with getting an ID. If they don't have a bank account, offering direct deposit or other alternatives for them to be able to get their pay once they become an employee. Offering a mentor or peer support during the first 90 days. Ensure access to hygiene facilities, lockers, and uniform supports if it's needed for the work. And then once again, help with transportation assistance, such as transit passes, rideshare credits, or partnering with those agencies that can help set up van pool rides for your workers. Ongoing and support. Offer and connect employees to wraparound services. Once again, going through the Workwell Minnesota or the community-based organizations or a career force location, they offer those wraparound services, partnering with them. And then lastly, evaluation and feedback. So track your hiring outcome and retention data to measure your success. See if providing alternative ways for someone that is unhoused to onboard and become an employee at your company. See if that's actually working. So, first steps. Everyone is not at the same starting place, and we understand that. So, employers looking to reach out to the unhoused workforce, work at their own pace, and there's meaningful strategic steps to create those opportunities. So just some examples. Identifying and connecting once again with a local agency that aligns with your hiring goals. Design low barrier jobs. Audit your job postings and interviewing hiring processes for any exclusionary requirements. Build a referral pipeline via trusted community organizations. Offer the support and stability. Train internal teams on inclusive practices and trauma-informed management. And definitely going back to the culture, fostering a culture of dignity and respect. Once again, regardless of what the circumstances are for your employees, everyone just wants to uh, have their dignity and have that respect, not only from their employer, but from their coworkers. So that should be one of the things that employers keep in mind. As long as you're fostering, you're helping to develop a culture of dignity and respect for that unhoused individual, you'll be successful and they'll be successful. So with that, we get to my favorite part, which is the panel discussion. I am so excited. I think that we have some great panelists that's going to provide a lot of good information. So I'll have them introduce themselves, and then three of them will go into their program, and then we will have our discussion. Well, I'll be asking some questions. So with that, we'll start in order. We'll go with Deanna, then Katie, Derek, Denise, and then Tosh.
Hello, my name is Deanna Monroe. I am a case manager at the Leech Lake Homeless Resource Program, where I prevent and get people housed, prevent evictions and house people with first month's rent and deposits. I am also a lived experience implementation consultant with Mitch, and I work with Minnesota Housing and Deed to end homelessness in Minnesota. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Brown, and I am also a case manager at Leech Lake Homeless Resources Program, Housing Authority. And I'm also a Mitch consultant with Minnesota Housing and Deed. Thank you.
Hey folks, my name is Derek Christensen. I am the alumni program coordinator at Wildflower Coffee. We do coffee, we do youth work, and yeah, working to give job opportunities to young folks who are experiencing housing insecurity.
Hi, good morning. My name's Denise Goldman. I'm the site director here at Project for Pride in Living's Re-Engagement Center, where we have a job readiness program within the Re-Engagement Center.
Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. My name is Tosh Thompson. I'm the outreach coordinator here at Small Sums, and we pretty much outfit people experiencing housing instability with the work items they need for their new jobs.
Right. Thank you so much. So let's go into Derek and talking about Flyer, sorry.
Well, hey, glad I could be here today, talk a little bit about what we do at Wildflower. Yeah, give it a little bit of a rundown of our work and life skills program. So Wildflower, we are a social enterprise here in the Twin Cities. And we run a work and life skills training program for young folks between the ages of 16 and 24, so pretty wide range, who have experienced being unhoused or housing instability. Part of what we do is we train people on how to become a barista, very like on the floor in our shops, getting very hands-on training. And we also do a number of paid learning experiences through our programming, which includes things like our U portfolio, which teaches people about things like job search, resume work, and other holistic life skills, along with other workshops we run that include mental health, customer service, financial wellness, and more. One really cool thing that we like to talk about with our space is that when you come into our coffee shops, you are like actively engaging in our program with our youth. It's not like you purchase a coffee, it goes out to some training program somewhere else. Our folks are on the floor learning hands-on, and they work every day alongside our wonderful staff of program leads and senior baristas. And we really rely on the power of community in these coffee shop spaces. Some of our program outcomes that we're really proud of looking back into 2024 is that we had a super high percentage of folks who, in getting this work experience, were able to maintain or improve stable housing as they learn these job skills, learn how to work with an income, and just kind of learn those general things about having a job. We had a 75% graduation rate, which we're really proud of. We were able to employ over 44 young people, and 100% of our graduates left continuing to work with employment counselors that we partnered with. And we're really proud of that for ongoing support, so that it's not just a 4-month job, it's support that continues outwards and onwards, and hopefully having a nice soft handoff into whatever next phase of life they would like to go into. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Denise Goldman.
Hi, again, I'm Denise. I'm at Project for Pride in Living. You can go to the next one. So I was just gonna mention a few quick things on here. PPL is very well known for housing, which is a little ironic, right? Because we're here talking about unhoused and there's a huge problem and we have kind of two different sections to PPL. So our mission includes twofold: housing and employment readiness and career readiness. So I'm going to talk about the career readiness part today, and specifically our job readiness program called Access. So these are just some statistics for you. They're in here so that you can look at them later if you would like to. But if you want to go forward, I'll talk about our career readiness pieces. So in career readiness, we have four different areas. One is education. We have two alternative high schools, an adult diploma high school, financial counseling and home ownership. Career Pathways has all of our career training programs that go anywhere from 4 months, I think, up to 2 years, which includes paid apprenticeships and internships as well. And then the Access program, which is one of the programs that I support that I'm going to talk a little bit more about today. So in our Access program, we serve anyone the age 18 and up. And what we do are everything from these basic skills that I have listed here, from skills and interest exploration, resumes and cover letters, job searches and applications. We work one-to-one individually with people on these career readiness skills. And what we have found lately is that this isn't quite enough for retention. So we can do a lot to get people into jobs with these three sort of basic things. But what we're really trying to focus on currently is the next slide. We're working on a career ready certificate, and nobody has to do all of these things, but we encourage people to do them, and we're trying to talk with our employers more about what they would like to see in something like this. So what we found is that in order for people to retain employment, and this is very much so in the unhoused area as well, but not having the skills to stay, right? And I'm sure we'll get more into everything, transportation, other issues that people have keeping their jobs, but what we're trying to do is get them prepared for that. So we've got some digital literacy skills that we do, career exploration, interview skills and communication, which has been a really huge one in terms of making sure that people know how to communicate when they do have issues that are preventing them from coming to work or doing a specific job. And then financial literacy, which is another big area, right? That like, if you don't know what you don't know. And so once you do get that job, how do you manage your finances so that you can continue with it? So yeah, that's us for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, we have Tosh from Small Sums.
Hey everybody, I'm Tosh again. So I am the outreach coordinator at Small Sums. Can you go to the next slide? So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We're out of St. Paul here, off of University in Raymond, and we outfit people experiencing housing instability with the work items they need for their new job. So Small Sums started around 2005, and they started out serving two demographics: people in bartending school and people in barber school. And around 2010, they realized like, hey, why just serve these two demographics? We really can just help anybody that's getting started in a new job. So we can go into the next slide. So pretty much our assistance covers, uniform items. So we do two tops, two bottoms. So whatever job field they're in, it don't matter if they're in construction, if they're in nursing, a barber, heck, they can be an astronaut. If NASA don't outfit them, we'll outfit them. So we do two tops, two bottoms, shoes or boots for the job, steel toe boots, tools for the job. So whatever job field they're in, whatever tools that's required, we outfit or get them the tools that they need. So like I said, if they're cosmetology or a welder or no matter what job field, we make sure they have the tools necessary to be successful for work. We also help with transportation assistance. So we'll provide a 31-day month-long bus pass. It's unlimited, so they can get back and forth to work for that month, and they'll be eligible for up to 3 of those total. So 3 months worth of transportation to get back and forth to work so they can get to that steady paycheck. We also help with professional licenses and certifications. So right now we have a huge uptick in individuals going for peer recovery specialists, or for CPR training, or whatever certification or license is required for that job. We help with assistance with that as well. And we also do LLCs too. If they're motivated and they have a business plan, we also help them get that LLC and some of the materials for their new business. So that's pretty much what we do here at Small Sums.
All right, thank you. So with that, let's get to the panel. And I will go ahead and stop sharing this. All right, so just before we start, a couple of things. I sent you guys the questions yesterday. There were a lot of them. Of course, we're not going to get to all of them. But also, you've been assigned some questions. Just because you weren't assigned a question doesn't mean that I will not ask you. So no pressure. But no, this is going to be a really good, robust discussion. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Deanna, I'll start with you first. Now, under the focusing on the understanding the unhoused talent pool, what key perspective shifts or shift do employers need to make when thinking about unhoused job seekers, in your opinion?
I think that some of these job seekers may have skills and trades from the past employers that could be beneficial to the work they're applying for. And they may not always know how to put that on the application, but hopefully we can find a way to help them get that going. They may need a little more time to acquire the needed documentations or documents like an ID, social security cards. There are places that can assist them with those items. If in the community, like our program, we assist with birth certificates, IDs, social security cards if need be.
Okay. So Derek, kind of piggybacking or continuing with that, you being an employer working with youth that are unhoused, when you're interviewing or when you're working with, because of the stigma of being unhoused, no one up front and says, hey, this is me, this is my name, and I'm an unhoused individual. Can you give me a job? A lot of employers, unfortunately, would say, okay, unhoused, instability, they might have a drug issue or, some type of mental issue. So I don't want that in my space. What do you think the key perspective shifts or shift as an employer? What do you think employers need to make when thinking about unhoused, or even when you're when you're interviewing someone that's unhoused? They don't identify that yet, but as they talk, I mean, employers can put two and two together. But yeah, what are some of those shifts that you think employers need to do as an employer yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I really try to dig deep on is making sure that the hiring process is accessible to individuals from the bottom up. So at whatever level we're interviewing folks at, we are being transparent about what the job needs are, where we can be flexible, and then just honestly asking about what kind of supports and barriers folks are facing. So when I'm interviewing participants to join in onto our 4-month program, I try to scaffold the interview process into a few parts. Sometimes if folks are interested, I will extend to them some of the interview questions preemptively. In fact, when folks come in for an interview, I do a little pre-interview, explaining kind of the groundwork of the role, talking about these are some expectations for the role. This is what we do here at Wildflyer. This is what this barista role you're applying for looks like. And then a lot of times I'll give folks a copy of the quote unquote formal interview questions. I'll grab a coffee, take a lap, and then come back and center up and really just acknowledge that, hey, interviews are stressful, especially when you're coming in from a space of like maybe feeling unstable, and being really honest about like interviews are stressful for the most prepared of us. And if maybe you had a tough time getting to work today or getting in for the interview today, I want to make sure that you still have an accessible shot at having a good interview process with us.
So do you feel like, because you said that, you would get up, grab some coffee, take a walk, kind of give them some time to, complete the application, sit back down, kind of have that heart to heart, that understanding. Do you feel that that allows that job seeker or that youth to become more relaxed and their more authentic self comes out
Yeah,
because of that?
yeah.
Would you recommend that
I
being something that employers do? I mean, not take a call,
a
no one can
hundred.
grab a cup of coffee and walk around, but just kind of
Yep,
making it more relaxing.
100%. So the energy in the interview space when I do this typically goes from super tense to like people relax, take a deep breath. When I come back to the table that I may be interviewing folks at, um, like maybe a nervous face turns into a bit of like a half smile. Um, and so a lot of like the participants and the youth that come in to interview with me have not had positive experience in workplaces before. So even just extending from the baseline of being like, hey, even in an interview, I'm not going to try to intimidate you. I'm not going to put this pressure on you to like show up in a way that is inauthentic to you. Um, really brings people showing up with their best selves. And I would say, even for folks who are not applying for my program, when you give people the space to show up as their authentic self, you can also make more informed hiring decisions at all levels. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So let's look at addressing misconceptions. Now, actually, this is a question for both Deanna and Katie. So, um, what's one assumption about unhoused people that hiring managers should unlearn, in your opinion?
I can start. I would say most unhoused individuals are highly motivated to work and often already have employed histories, certificates, and skills. What keeps them out of work are things like transportation, IDs, stable housing, and it's not like the lack of ability or willingness to work. Thank you.
I,
Deanna?
so I think that they need to unlearn that process of unhoused people are not reliable on drugs or all criminals, that they cannot perform any or all job requirements because of their circumstances, or that they are bad people because of their situations that they're in right now. Thanks.
Mhm. And you know what? Let me ask Denise and Josh the same question. What's one assumption? Because you work with job seekers, you work with those that are unhoused. I'm assuming that, sometimes you are the convener or the connection between that individual and maybe an employer that is working or has reached out to your organization. So what is one assumption, in addition to what Deanna and Katie mentioned, what's that one assumption about unhoused people that you think hiring managers should unlearn?
Yeah, I would say that I would piggyback off of them and say that, um, a lot of times, a lot of the barriers that they are facing, as far as not having access to a phone or internet, they might not, give the impression they're not as prepared. But for the most part, I experience most of our workers come in motivated, ready to work, willing to work overtime and do whatever they need to do to put themselves in a better situation. And so I feel like, just providing a safe space for them to feel comfortable, to be motivated to work, and kind of just just provide that give that gap in that room for them to thrive in that workspace. I think uh, you know for the most part they are motivated and ready to get to it. So and they're really open for more opportunities within that workspace for that promotion or that advancement. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I would add to all of that, everything that everyone has said. I think that there is a stereotype that the person obviously doesn't want to work. That's a stereotype that I think is a really common one. One of the ones that I talked about with my team earlier was the stereotype or the assumption that everybody is living in a tent and in an encampment and not really understanding how pervasive unhoused populations are throughout the state. So some ideas um, around that in general. And I think that the media has a lot to do with that, right? So kind of trying to help inform people that these are populations that are just like everyone else. And they're not necessarily, the same as what the media has portrayed recently with drugs or only encampments or things like that.
So do you think the media has a bigger role in influencing the public, especially those hiring managers, those, that make those decisions? Because like you said, when you look at, the encampment areas, especially the one in that was in South Minneapolis, it was never anything positive. They never went in and talked to someone that was working towards, finding a home. It was always this happened and this bad thing happened and that bad thing had happened. So do you think that um not only employers, but just, the media and those that in charge of kind of shaping what people see on social media about unhoused, do you think that they hold um the same level or even maybe a greater responsibility? And then, and not
Yeah.
only just out to everybody, do you feel like that's something too that needs to be addressed?
I definitely do. I think that the media plays an outsized role in all of our stereotypes and perceptions. And I think that, just like you're saying, we could be focusing on somebody who's living in an encampment who is managing to navigate all these different systems just to get to a job interview or just to get to a place like ours to build a resume. The skills needed to do that when you are unhoused are significant. But we don't focus on that. We tend to focus only on problems. And we have politicians that are saying things like, dirty or violent or all the stereotypes that people have that for sure I think play into how employers perceive them.
Anyone else wants to make a comment about this as well, about the social media's influence and impact?
Yeah, I think
Or did
it's
Denise cover it? Okay.
yeah, no, I just think that it's very true. Like I think that media itself is a very programmable source of shaping our thoughts and the way we see things. And I think even though if you don't even have that lived experience, you kind of lean towards what you saw on TV or what you saw on social media without getting to a space of understanding. Um, for example, I was just recently in Dubai, and a gentleman came up to me and asked me if I was a rapper. Just because I had on some chains. And I was like, "Wait, no, I'm not a rapper." Like, what? And he was like, "Oh, I just see you on TV, this." And so it's just, just an example of how, media can shape how people perceive you. And I think, just around the unhoused community is such a strong image around what people can expect from them without having to get a real life understanding of who they really are as a person.
Okay, so let me just say, Tosh, I liked you until you mentioned that you went to Dubai. Now I'm a little jealous, so I don't think I can really think of you in a good light anymore because that's one of the things on my to-do list is to travel to Dubai. So would love to hear about your experience at a different time. So thank you. Well, we can go to the next question. And actually, Denise, I this question is going to be for you, or starting with you. So looking at barriers and systematic changes. And so one of the things that PPL does, which I think is wonderful. I know that all of the community-based organizations do this, but you guys are really, really good at providing those wraparound services, those support services. Um, It's important for employers to recognize, barriers don't suddenly disappear once a candidate, is offered employment. What barriers do unhoused people face even after they get the job that you see? Like, what are those additional wraparound services? You're working with someone that's unhoused, they get a job. It's not like, okay, you got a job. All right, go ahead, prosper. You know, what are some of those barriers that are still there? Are there new barriers that come up? Once they get a job, like, what are some of those that unhoused job seekers or employees at that point still face?
Yeah, I think they face pretty much all the same ones that they had the day before they got the job, right? So, and I think that's a misconception on the employer's part that oh well, you have a job now, so go get a house, or go rent an apartment. It's like, well, I don't exactly have the first and last month's rent, to do a deposit or that type of thing. Transportation for our participants is a huge one, I think, for everybody. So getting to and from work, the communication skills. So what we do, some of the things that are solutions to not, just dwell completely on the barriers. But so what we do with the wraparound services is we have we have some financial literacy training. So we try and help people create a budget, figure out what they're going to do now that they do have the job, how we can start saving some money as well, pay off debt, things like that. So we work with them on that. We provide support services for transportation. It's probably the biggest support service that we provide, in addition to phone bills. So trying to keep people able to communicate. So the transportation, giving them bus cards, gas cards, trying to help them get to and from work, trying to help them communicate with their boss so that they know um, that that's going to be an issue. So if, for example, their car breaks down or their bus is late or something like that, not everybody knows that they need to communicate that. So we do some work on those types of skills in terms of how do you communicate that appropriately so that it's not, just I'm going to be late, but you actually can explain why. And we try and do some wraparound with those support services. I'm trying to think what else. One of the big issues that we have when people get work is the benefits cliff idea, right? So as soon as they get the job, they're worried that they're going to lose other things. And so we try and help them figure out that as well with the financial literacy piece of, okay, if you lose this because you're getting this, how are we going to work that out? Is it's there's so much more complicated there than people understand. So that's some of the things that we've encountered.
So I will say, you mentioned the benefits cliff. So for I think a little over 10 years, I was a counselor with the MFIP program. And I know that there's a few people in the audience that's part of that program. So that's the Minnesota Family Investment Program. So I was a job counselor, but even before that, I worked with the county and I was a financial worker. So I was approving those monthly benefits. So started my work history, my professional work history was as a financial manager, then went into the infant counselor. And yes, that benefits cliff. And, I should have had more questions about that. That was a serious thing because there were a lot of the clients that they were happy that they got a job, but then they were also terrified because they didn't have the financial literacy. And as soon as I said, okay, we have to, put a plan together. We have to make sure your childcare is in order. We need to make sure that, you have some transportation. We need to make sure, let's look at, budgeting, and that could be very overwhelming. And I think, what you said for employers, that's maybe that might be, I don't want to say for sure, but that might be one of the mindsets is okay, you got this job now, you're getting, a livable wage. Now you don't need all of that. Now you didn't know how you go from not having a steady stream of income to now having a steady stream of income, and you just automatically should know financial literacy and bills and how everything works. And that's not the case. And a huge barrier. So, thank you for mentioning the benefits, Cliff. For those in the audience that are unfamiliar with that, definitely do some research on that because that is a real thing. For a lot of unhoused or just individuals that are on the lower end of the yearly income scale, as we would say. I'm going to open up that question to everybody else as well. What are some barriers? What barriers do unhoused people face even after they get the job? So, anyone else want
I
to
say,
add on? Yes.
yeah, I would say a huge thing is childcare. A lot of individuals, they want to work as many hours as they can, but school is only for so long and you can only get so many hours in. And so a lot of individuals, are looking for childcare or after school programs or, anything that can allow them to work more so they can earn more or save more, put more to the side. So I say childcare is a huge one.
Anyone else?
I had a I had a really great conversation with one of my lead staff today, just asking them a very similar question about what barriers have they noticed that they would love to be addressed. And these are folks who are working with participants who are um, actively experiencing unstable housing on a day-to-day. And one of the big barriers that they brought up is that there are a lot of unspoken rules and assumptions in a workplace that don't get brought up until someone is being reprimanded or like going through a disciplinary process. So being able to approach the workplace and really demystify the unspoken rules can really give folks a leg up when it comes to being able to maintain and sustain a job. So if if an employee doesn't realize that showing up maybe 3 minutes late for a few days in a row will lead to some sort of discipline or perception about them, if we don't make that clear and explicit, folks won't know until they're getting in trouble for it, which is not great.
So before anyone else answers, I just wanted to say I like that, and I wanted to mention and ask this also then to the group. So do you feel that employers not understanding, or some employers not understanding that life happens? That yes, if someone comes in 3 minutes late, or those examples, that you had just mentioned with the conversation you had earlier today, um, could that be looked at as a barrier too? A barrier that people how unhoused people face after getting the job is employers being really strict and not being open to life happens. I always have this saying, when you're dealing with people, it's never black and white. It's always shades of gray because there are things and circumstances that happen that are different for each person that's going to have a different outcome. So as the employer, like you said, instead of looking at someone coming in 3 minutes or 5 minutes for the past week and saying, you know what, I'm going to write you up, you're not following the rules, maybe pulling them to the side and having that conversation because maybe you find out it might be a transportation issue and or it might be a childcare issue and it might be something that if you give them a month or some time to fix it, that 3 minute coming in late, that situation goes away. And not only do you have that employee still, you're going to increase your retention of that employee because they're going to look back at that and say my employer worked with me. So I like that. But for everyone else, if there's anything else, anything that you need to would like to add, what barriers do unhoused people face even after they get the job that wasn't mentioned, or did we cover the majority of it?
One more thing that I thought about is schedules changing for people. So that makes it really difficult, right? Whether you're talking about childcare or you're talking about trying to get back to the shelter in time or whatever the issue might be. That change in schedule, and we sort of expect people to just be able to do that. And sometimes they call it flexible, and it's not flexible when it's not consistent. And so people have a difficult time with that.
All right. Okay, so Derek, looking at highlighting strengths. Once again, as an employer, what skills or qualities do you see frequently in unhoused candidates that employers might not expect?
Yeah. So I would say a lot of the strengths that I see that come through most apparently and most often with folks in my program um, really thrive in like task oriented settings. So when the when the job is clear and when there are expectations set and there's honest and open communication going in both directions. Um, I have folks just ripping through tasks. My shop never looks cleaner than when I have like a new cohort starting. Folks are really enthusiastic about like staying on top of it and like showing that they're able to do the requirements of the job. On the flip side, I have found that folks often can struggle if it is like way too ambiguous about like I need you to show up on time. Here's these unspoken rules and also do everything correctly or a concert like that doesn't work very well. But that really thriving in task oriented roles. Folks also tend to really reciprocate trust if you're willing to put trust in them. A lot of my applicants, again, coming from job environments where they're not offered a lot of trust or like weren't allowed to do certain things based on certain perceptions given by employers, extending that trust back ends up being a really positive chain of events for both parties. Um, and generally, really proactive go-getters. I have to talk to my folks about what does it mean when we have a little bit of downtime at work that isn't like feeling like you have to occupy this space with like overly proactive things, and how can we find a good balance?
Okay. Well, we are almost at the end of the panel discussion. That doesn't mean, the questions will continue with my counterpart, but I have one last question, and that is for everyone. So that question would be, how do you think people with lived experience want to be included in shaping employment outreach programs? So once again, how do you think people, or in this case, unhoused population with these lived experiences or with the experiences of being unhoused want to be included when it comes to shaping employment outreach programs? I know I ended with a tough one, huh?
No, I think that most people that have experience being unhoused are very willing to volunteer their time to be a part of some initiative, whether it's, care pack drives, coat drives, backpack drives, or, food drives and things like that. I think it's a matter of setting up setting up on a platform to allow people that are interested in those opportunities to come to you. Because I found that, since been here for the last 4 years, I think the more I go to outreach events and speak to different individuals about our program, the more people are interested in how they can, serve us or help with our mission. So, they're willing to come in and say, hey, can we, do a care pack assembly drive, and can we, come in and help y'all restock, or what do y'all need help with, And so I feel like, just presenting an opportunity to individuals and putting the opportunity out there will attract those individuals to want to come in and be a part of something that's, you know, helping people that is going through something that they experience as well.
Mhm. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll go. I really appreciated what Tosh just said about like put the opportunities out there as opposed to pulling people in. Like, I think it's really important for people to have agency in how they interact or if they interact. And so some people don't want to, right? And for us to say, pull them in and ask them to do something based on their lived experience versus having a lot of opportunities for anybody and allowing that to happen and for them to have their own agency and say, I would like to do that. And just being open to listening and ideas and things like that.
I would
I had
love to
something to add to that. Oh, go ahead.
Sweet. I was just gonna say, as an extension of that agency piece, we found a lot of success in having lots of accessible feedback channels for folks that actually get used and actually get listened to. And one way we're kind of hoping to do an extension of that is for our graduates of our program. We're in the process of making a youth advisory board for folks to really be involved and be decision makers and be change makers in the space. In a way that has a legitimate impact on the employer.
Deanna?
Hi. Yeah, I was just gonna say that as a lived experience consultant, for Mitch, Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness, um, we do a lot of networking. We find out what other communities or entities might be able to bring to the table to help end homelessness. I just think that it's and then my day job at the Homeless Resource Program for Leech Lake Housing Authority, all of us case managers have lived experience. I think hiring lived experience consultants or employees that have been there are very passionate about what they do. They understand what it's like to be unhoused. They understand what it takes to start over again, to rebuild your life out of addiction, out of being homeless, just a bunch of different things, mental health. We've all experienced something in our life where we have lived experience. It's not just the people on house, it's everybody has been through trauma. So I think that that's a big thing that, just give us the opportunity to share what we've been through, network together and pull it. Like we do deed, we did a resource fair, homeless resource fair recently in our community. Had a great turnout. 31 entities showed up and it was really great. It was just little things that could help your community members to even become a, prepared to apply for jobs. It wasn't even to get, jobs. It was just to prepare them for a job fair coming up. So it really helps that we network and all work together. Thanks.
Thanks. Katie?
I think my co-panelists did a great, fantastic job at answering that question.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And let's go ahead and I will bring up the presentation again. There is one thing I would like to share. So here are some resources. I realize that I have a few more resources I would like to add to this list. So before we post this on our webpage, for people to look at the presentation, there'll be a few more resources. But of course, Avivo, they're ending homelessness services, Emerge, Small Sums, YMCA of the North, Lutheran Social Services, Ujama Place, the Listening House, and of course, the organization I mentioned a couple of times during this presentation, Workwell Minnesota, which is that collaboration of community-based organizations that employers can reach out to. So I would like to say to Deanna, Katie, Derek, Denise, and Tosh, thank you so very much for this robust discussion. Definitely my counterpart, Della, who I will introduce and pass this along to in a few seconds. We'll continue the conversation and I have some more questions for you, but I do appreciate that. I do appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this Work for Wednesday webinar. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to my counterpart, Della, who will talk about next month's Workforce Wednesday, and we'll continue the discussion during our Unplugged.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great conversation. And I hope everybody stays with us as we continue on with this panel discussion. I'm Della Ludwig. I am the Workforce Strategy Consultant for Central and Southwest, covering 22 counties in this region. We'll be switching in a couple of minutes to the Unplugged, where everybody can unmute themselves and turn on their cameras and ask their questions directly to our panelists as we continue on this conversation until 12:30. But first, I'd just like to go ahead and give a reminder of next month. Join us with Deeds Workforce Strategy Consultants, as well as Career Solutions and Central Minnesota Jobs and Training Services, CMJTS, on October 1st. We are going to be talking about enhance employee skills with incumbent worker on the job training and other grant funded training opportunities. Employee training is important because it represents a great opportunity to improve job seeker and employee skills and knowledge, but it can also be costly to the employer. Join us on October 1st to learn about the grant-funded opportunities like incumbent worker training and on-the-job training and other opportunities available to employers that can prepare employees for higher responsibilities and show employees they are valued without hurting the employer's pocketbook. Next slide. I'd like to thank Adejewa and her panelists for their conversation on engaging the unhoused workforce. It was a very in-depth conversation, and I hope everybody walked away with lots of good resources. Please take a minute to complete the survey on how we can continue to grow our Workforce Wednesday events and any topics that you would have for us for 2026. We will now switch to our unplugged session, which we are going to go ahead and unmute our mics, turn on your cameras, and you can ask the panelists your questions directly. And I will go ahead and also be asking a lot of questions. We have a ton, as the panelists had received all of this information in advance. And just a really great panel right here. Deanna and Katie from Leech Lake Housing Authority, Derek from Wildflower Coffee, Denise from Project for Pride and Living, and Tosh from Small Sum. So great panel here. So glad that all of you could join us. And lots of different background here. Derek, you're working with youth for 16 to 24 year olds in your HR recruiting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How do you find these youth and how do you prepare them for their jobs?
Yeah, 100%. So most of the youth we get in for our program are referred to us by other partner organizations, case managers, and a variety of other support people. We open up a formal application process every 3 or 4 months, and we have kind of a scaffolded interview process where we reach out to folks who seem like they'd be a good fit. We conduct interviews, and then we have a formal pre-program meeting, is what we call it, where we do initial onboarding and expectation setting before they're even starting on their first day on the job. We have also seen a pretty major uptick in just word of mouth transfer between graduates of our program, talking to their friends, folks in maybe like drop-in center or other community spaces that they occupy, and just folks who have stopped into our space and are like, well, this seems super interesting, and I know someone who would be a great fit for this.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Derek. Deanna and Katie, Leech Lake Housing Authority. Can you talk a little bit about your housing authority and how you're assisting some of the people at Leech Lake?
Sure, I can go first. Actually, we're under Leech Lake Housing Authority, but we're actually the Leech Lake Homeless Resource Program. So what
Perfect.
I do, I'm a FHPAP, which is Family Homeless Prevention and Assistance Program.
Perfect.
So I help prevent evictions, and I also help assist with first month's rent and deposits once they find a place. And I do help with disconnects and utilities if necessary. So that's what I do as a case manager. Katie?
Perfect.
I'm also a case manager with Deanna at the Homeless Resources Program, and I help the youth. I have with rental assistance security deposit. I also have host home, 5 host home vouchers, and I also help with the VASH programs. We have 20 vouchers that help veterans each month with rental assistance.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Denise, you are with Project for Pride in Living. You had mentioned Access Career Readiness Program, which sounds phenomenal, and the need skills to stay. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about that and some things that employers can be doing with that as well?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so in the Access program, we're trying to reach out to more employers to find out what they're looking for so that we can match those skill sets. We do a lot of training skills in the Access program as well as in our career pathways programming. But because the Access program isn't a specific pathway, it's a little bit harder because people come in with all kinds of different skill levels and all kinds of different interests. And so we've been working hard to try and find what types of certifications and training can we provide that the employer, that's a specific employer, is looking for. So for example, we just started working with a construction firm, and we're going to start offering OSHA 10 and OSHA 30, which we've never done before, and just kind of try to help our participants be more prepared for specific jobs on more of a career pathway as well than just trying to get a job, any job. So
Perfect. That's awesome. Tosh, Small Sums, Outreach Coordinator. I love that, offering the dress ready, the tools, the transportation, licensing, certification. How do people get a hold of you? How do they make sure that they can get all these resources from you?
Yes, so typically we do an intake process. A lot of our workers are referred to us by partner agencies. For example, we partner with Wildfire here as well. Um, they're awesome. And we also do flyering all around the Twin Cities. We drop off flyers at all the shelters. We have our sign outside. We have some flyers at the library. So we try to, do as much outreach as we can, attend career fairs, open streets events, and try to get the word out as much as possible as far as having access to the individuals that need our services. And so typically, we get referrals in, and then we'll do an intake process over the phone. So we'll really quick process, ask a couple questions, ask about their new job or new training program, get their sizes, ask if they need transportation assistance, and if there's some type of service that we don't provide, we'll try to connect them to other resources or other community partners that can help them with the other things that they might be in need of. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I'm going to stick with you for a second and ask you another question. So,
Okay.
what is the best way to set up communication for an unhoused applicant, and that doesn't have consistent access? I know we kind of talked about this a little bit, but what are some ways that you can kind of assist them?
Yeah, I think that try to find a contact, asking them if they have a contact that they do have access to. So if they have a friend, a significant other, if they have an email address that they can possibly access at the library. I just had an individual call this morning actually, and she don't have any access to a phone or to a computer. And so I was like, what's the best way to contact you? And she was like, well, I have a friend that you can get a hold of that I see them every day. And so, when I see them, if, you leave a message, I'll call you right away when I have the opportunity. And so I just think that it's more so just asking them what's the best way that we can find you or communicate to you.
Excellent, thank you. And Katie and Deanna, what are some of the local resources you can give someone to assist them if they're unhoused or on the verge of being unhoused? What are some of the things that you offer to them?
Well, a lot of people refer them to our program to get assistance. We have a lot of housing opportunity resources that we have, apartment applications. We have a computer that they can come in and do applications online. We also have a PO box for individuals that are unhoused. So we try to order them cell phones off of like the Obama phones or the the free phones. A lot, we haven't been receiving them, so I'm not sure
Sure.
if it's because of our PO box. But we're trying to look into our grants to see if we can order phones for our people, our clients. And then also, the other resources that we have around the area are behavioral health. Um, we have treatment centers, inpatient and outpatient. The community is working hard to get all the entities to start working together. So, but basically they get referred to us a lot. And then we refer them out, like if we can, to other housing opportunities. But like I said, it's up to them to search for the place. All we can do, we're trying to get, actually, we have some new bringing home vouchers for rental assistance that are coming up. And we also have the Housing Trust Fund rental assistant vouchers, which are utilized right now. But we're trying to get into a landlord association meeting to talk to landlords and present on these vouchers and explain to them how beneficial it would be for them. It's guaranteeing rent. And then for our program, it's getting people housed that are unhoused right now.
Excellent. And I don't know if anybody from the audience, I did ask the audience questions already. Does anybody else have another question? Nancy, I saw you had one. If you wanted to ask that yourself, Nancy Z. She had one about, do you also look for those places where individuals might transitionally house, like recovery houses or just release houses, by hiring them? They can more assuredly be housed by having employment and then able to move out. Do you guys work with those at all as well?
Right now, the only real housing that I know of on the reservation is Leech Lake Housing Authority, and we
Sure.
currently, our building caught on fire, our main building, so we are in the process. We still have houses, but our office building burnt down, so our application process has stopped for a minute. Hopefully next week
Scary.
we'll get it all going, but we do have 5 units in the Conifer in Bemidji, and we also have some Park Place housing that we pay the rent when we find individuals that qualify for those programs and in homes, but we only have 5 transitional housing. We do have inpatient treatment for men and women up here, but I don't know how hard it is to get into there. There's other resources in Bemidji. We really don't have too much extra housing on the reservation. It's all Leech Lake Housing Authority. There are some
Sure.
private landlords, but they're looking to sell, not really rent. But that's why I'm trying to see the
Great.
landlord
Thank you.
association.
Great. Maisha, you had your hand raised. Maisha Holly, do you have a question or would you like to add anything?
I might
If you
have
want to
more
take
so of a
yourself,
question.
go
I'm
ahead.
more so of a question. It's more so I work with a lot of families that have recently come to Minnesota, excuse me.
Mhm.
And it has been a struggle trying to connect them with training opportunities. And I feel like I've connected with Avivo and whatnot. So I guess the question that I'm trying to ask, are there any programs, employment programs that specialize in helping immigrant families that may be at risk of losing their housing?
Great question. Anybody want to tackle that one with immigrant housing?
You know, I don't know about housing in particular, but one of the places that we refer a lot of people to for job training for people that are new to country is the International Institute of Minnesota. I don't know if you've connected with them at all, but they have a lot of training programs, and I believe they also have job placement and housing assistance as well. So that might be a place worth looking at.
Great. Thanks, Denise. Appreciate it.
I think another one is Clues. Clues is another good resource uh, that we refer a lot of our workers to, and they help with a lot of wraparound services as well. We also refer people to like Hire or Twin Cities Rise as well too.
I love it. Thank you. Great resources. All right. So, what are some of the best practices that hiring teams could put in place for the unhoused individuals to make it easier for them to apply, be considered, make that transition? I know we kind of talked a little bit about this. What are some of those best practices that you would consider doing if you're trying to put this in place at your workforce? I'll go ahead, Derek.
Yes, I will jump in on that. Um, so kind of like what I mentioned before, making sure that like from the get-go, from application to interview to onboarding, that you're really centering like inclusive, holistic, and accessible like hiring practices. Um, and then the next step is really like when folks are on the job, um, being open and transparent about what their needs are, and um, like not punishing your staff for coming to you with requests of flexibility in certain ways, or asking for resources. Um, Really familiarizing yourself with resources that you can connect folks with. If, say, transportation is a barrier, having those action plans in step or in place so that you can refer people through those channels. I did also see a question earlier about when it comes to things like attendance, like it is what are best practice for those. I implement what I like to think is a pretty cool attendance policy here. We dub a lot of the practices we do flexible accountability. So how can you hold folks accountable while also providing pathways for folks to make a mistake on the job and still be able to come back to the table and not just be fired immediately. So we actually have some scaffolded procedures for our lead teams to work with folks who are like maybe running a little bit behind, and some expectations about what the rest of your shift and what next steps look like. Um, so yeah, the more scaffolded and flexible accountability you can offer folks while still upholding the standards and the core expectations of a job um, are really important.
Love it. Anybody else want to add some things that employers can be doing, or what would you suggest? And I think we're going to just kind of talk a little bit more like what are some of the strongest suggestions that you can give to employers to make sure that they're successful in the unhoused world, the best advice that you can give those employers. And I'm going to start with you, Denise.
Sure. One of the things that we found is in the hiring stage, if people can do things like go to events, get out of their office building, because having the flexibility of either drop-in hours where people can come in to apply, or you're out at an event, because that in-person piece is a lot more convenient, I guess, or it works better for our in-house population than trying to make a phone call or do a Zoom meeting or something like that. So that's one thing. And then I really like what Derek was saying. We've talked a lot about that sometimes people wait for you to make the mistake, right? And so it's like when you know somebody is unhoused, sometimes there's a little bit of a bias there and you're just waiting for them to mess up. It's like, see, I knew that this person couldn't get here on time. And it's like, take a step back and know that this might be a little bit harder, and have a little bit of grace there with people coming in who might have been experiencing homelessness in the past or currently.
I love that. Tosh?
Yes, I would suggest that if employers can have some type of bulletin board or some type of Google Drive that's full of resources that can be beneficial for them that they can refer to. So, even if they're not homeless, or might be facing eviction or anything like that, there's something they can refer to help mitigate that issue. So I think just having something accessible to them to where they can have resources available, or information available to them that can provide the things that they need, would be a powerful suggestion, I would say.
Love it. Derek, do you want to add anything else?
I think that covers a lot of bases in terms of like practical steps that employers can do. Um, I suppose one last thing I would really like to add to that is really like leaning on your partners. Like Tosh mentioned, I love working with small sums. I love having resources in the community where like you find that employers and community partners that are working together are a lot more interconnected than a lot of people know. So like especially in the Twin Cities, like the web of support services that people have access to is kind of bonkers. So if you are an employer who is curious about additional ways that you can support an unhoused employee, um, ask and look around and you will find 10 people with 10 other people in their back pocket that you can dig into.
It's awesome. Robert, you have your hand raised. Would you like to ask your question or have your statement?
Can you hear
There
me?
you go.
Robert Guzman with Scale It. We've actually been working since the pandemic with the Continuum of Care here in Chicago, and we were happy to announce that we're part of the Minneapolis Career Force now down there. So it's awesome.
Great.
But one of the things that I think we're going to have in common is, when we had the influx of new arrivals, 34,000 of them in Chicago, and, a big percentage of them got their work permits. The biggest barrier was digital literacy. It's always been digital literacy. It's like, especially with this population, us working with the Employment and Income Task Force here in Chicago and the whole Illinois pilot and everything going on, it all comes back to digital literacy, even to apply. And then you have to remember capacity. And Hennepin, Carver, in Chicago, anywhere, it's about capacity. So if your career coach or employment specialist or whoever your frontline staff is spending hours on turning something into a PDF, really, we got ahead of it and we collaborated with our education and technology director, and we began providing basic digital literacy, and you can see the progress. Folks that are engaged, it's almost addicting to them because they continue to get certifications, badges, they feel comfortable. And then it's at the beginning, it's a big investment, but then it pays off because you look at your resource rooms and you look at your staff and no one else is, teaching people how to click on the mouse. And really, it's all across every language. So I just wanted to share that and see if there's something already in place, in Hennepin, Carver, Minneapolis, that is, putting digital literacy at the tip of the sword. Thank you.
Any of you want to tackle that with digital literacy?
We do a lot of digital literacy in our access program, as well as in our adult diploma program. That it tends to be for us, like you're saying, very, very basic skills that's needed, as opposed to maybe, we also do things like Microsoft certifications, but the basic skills of how to right click and how to copy paste and things like that. So yeah, in the past, we've done workshops for those, walk-in workshops, and we're in the process of sort of rebooting those. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of that is needed. So we do some, but we're ramping it up to do a little bit more. I'd love to talk to you about that more as well.
Yeah, I'll go
Excellent.
ahead and put my name in the chat. I'll put my information in the chat. What happened is over the pandemic, we just started with one American Job Center, and now we're providing 8 out of the 10 American Job Center in this area with digital literacy. And all we did was just kind of convert a staff member into a navigator, kind of digital, like who's kind of like a station. And it really has worked. I mean, just the credentials and all of that is blowing up, So I'll put my information in the chat, and hopefully I'll see you when next time I'm in Minneapolis.
Excellent. Great. And Becky shared some information too about North Star digital literacy out there as well. So wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. I greatly appreciate it. Any last words of wisdom that any of you want to share?
Invest in the power of second chances on your folks. Give them a chance. Know that goofing up is part of the process, and keep investing in our community, in our young folks, and in our unhoused folks. They deserve the chance, and your organization will be better for it.
I love it. Tosh or Denise?
I just appreciate everybody for being here. I always say to our workers, if we're not taking care of each other, we're failing. So, before I got into the nonprofit world, I found myself complaining a lot, like, man, ain't nobody out here doing nothing. Like, it sucks. Like, all these homeless people. And I'm like, and after getting into the nonprofit world, it's been eye-opening because I'm starting to realize and understand there's like so many people out here that's willing to, spend their life and career making the world a better place. So I just appreciate everybody and being part of this big community of world changers. So thank you all.
Love it. One small step, right?
Yes.
Denise?
Those are really hard to follow, you two.
Right?
But yeah, I think for just remember the humanity of people, right? We're all just a bunch of people messing up, like you're saying, trying again, doing what we can do on a daily basis. And the more grace we can give each other, I think the farther along we can get.
Love it. Great advice from our great panelists. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you. We've learned so much in this very short time. We will be getting this recording out there to everybody. We will put it also out on the Career Force Workforce Wednesday page as well. Everybody who registered, who's here with us, will also get an email from us with all the information. Thank you again for staying with us this entire time, and kudos to our panelists. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Great job.